someone uses the wrong name, or the wrong pronouns, or just acts in these weird kind of ways that show they don't respect me as a woman or even as a human being. These are things that can contribute to this wonderful experience known as social dysphoria. Living in a society where I'm treated like shit as a trans woman, or people think it's okay to not respect me simply because I'm trans. This idea could probably encapsulate all the social interactions that contribute to gender dysphoria. Just all these interactions that involve being invalidated, discriminated against, harassed, even interactions that expose us to violence. Broadly speaking, we could think of social dysphoria like the sibling of body dysphoria, and both of these are the kids of our least favorite family member, gender dysphoria. Body dysphoria is really any distress that we, as trans or non-binary people, may experience if physical aspects of how our body looks or feels does not match our affirmed gender identity. And then social dysphoria is any form of social interaction that creates distress because our gender identity was not affirmed in that social interaction. In discussions of gender dysphoria, we tend to focus a lot more on this body dysphoria piece. I won't dive into this too much in today's video, but that's probably in no small part due to the fact that medical and mental health providers often hyper-focus on our bodies and not so much on the environments that we live in when it comes to conceptualizing and treating our experiences of gender dysphoria. It's easier for medical providers and society as a whole to tell us things like, the problem is with you and your body and how you perceive it. Here are medical options to help you fix your problem. But we aren't going to fix the problems that you encounter on a daily basis outside of your body, like interacting with other people and systems and just all sorts of forms of invalidation, even here in the medical office. That's too complex and difficult to address. It is complex and difficult, sure, but we can't or shouldn't separate our experiences of gender dysphoria from the external world with which we interact with on a daily basis. All this being said, I want to emphasize that not all trans and non-binary people experience gender dysphoria. Identifying with a gender other than what we were assigned with at birth does not have to also result in experiencing distress. It often does, but it does not have to. Some of us may only experience body dysphoria, some of us may only experience social dysphoria, some of us may experience both. I think many of us do experience both to some degree, and we're all going to experience gender dysphoria in different ways. Like, different things are going to trigger our experiences of dysphoria, and to different levels of severity. Basically, the idea I'm trying to say here is that your experience of gender dysphoria may look different from mine, and mine may look different from the next person, and so on and so forth. But that does not mean that our experiences are any less valid than one another. And on that note, you might be wondering, what do we do about experiencing social dysphoria? How do we make it more manageable? Rather than saying, this is what you must do and it will always work, because that's a lie, because there is no one-size-fits-all model really for anything, I want to share what social dysphoria is like for me and some of the things that I do to make it more manageable, in the hopes that some of these things might be helpful for you. A big part of social dysphoria for me is this fear or anticipation of people saying hurtful things when I go out into the world, or even just anxiety about people staring at me. In many ways, we could say this is similar to components of social anxiety, but it's very specific to my identity and experiences as a trans person and as a trans woman. And sometimes, I'll admit, these thoughts and feelings make it difficult to leave my house. There are many days when I spend a great deal of time getting myself mentally prepared and even physically prepared. What I mean by physically prepared is spending tons of time trying to look as passable as possible to try to decrease my chances of getting treated badly. It does sometimes take me longer than I'd like to get out the door, also because of that mental preparation piece where I'm like, I'm anxious. Oh shit, I'm gonna pace and sit around or find other things to do, and then eventually I'll hopefully leave the house. Once I'm actually out in the world, creating narratives about any awkward or uncomfortable experiences really helps with my dysphoria. Like if I notice people staring at me and it's not in my head because I've caught people looking at me more times than I can count, and people really aren't discreet about that, and I also think that me and many other trans people are often hyper aware of our surroundings. I usually just create a more positive story in my head to remove any discomfort or remove as much as I can that I may be experiencing. Classic cognitive behavioral reframing for any therapy nerds out there. Telling myself that they're looking at me because I'm tall. I mean, I am 6'5", which is actually the case in a good number of times that people are just looking at me because it's like, oh my God, I've never seen a woman that tall before, or not very often at least. Or maybe they're just looking at me because they think I'm attractive, or I carry myself with confidence. Or maybe they just happen to be looking in my direction at the same time I glance over at them and we awkwardly make eye contact and go about our days. Just thinking that these things are positive or just neutral. And try not to worry about the negative what if scenarios in terms of what if they're thinking this or thinking that, because it really doesn't matter because there's not really anything I can do about that. And if someone does say something to me that's not so great, like misgendering me or asking an invasive question, I try to assume as much as I can that their intentions are good at heart, unless I can tell they're being mean and nasty very intentionally. And on that note, if they are being mean or nasty, I know that any issue they may have with me is 110% about them and their own discomforts. It does not mean that there is anything at all wrong with me. It's really about reframing how I think and feel about these situations in order to take any power that they might otherwise hold over me to make me feel distressed. This is obviously easier said than done, and it is painful when people say hurtful things, either directly to me or when I overhear them saying things about me to someone else. One of the biggest things, people and systems can be really shitty, but I have to remind myself that I am valid just as I am. That there are people in my life who do love and support me for me. I'm the happiest and most fulfilled I've ever been in my life, even with these difficulties. I do realize that this puts a lot, if not all, of the onus on us as trans and non-binary people to manage these shitty situations. Simply put, that's not fucking fair. Part of reducing our collective social dysphoria as a community of trans and non-binary people is creating a world that has more and more spaces that are affirming, and that shouldn't be and is not solely our responsibility. But many of us do take on that responsibility because in many times change won't happen if we, the people who are experiencing these negative experiences, don't take moves to make that change. But when I do experience things like social dysphoria, I have to do what I need to do to maintain my cool, get to a comfortable place, and simply move on about my day. All these things admittedly took a while to get to where I am today. I'm now at over 6 years since starting my transition, and I still have tough days, but thankfully the number of positive days and positive experiences tend to outweigh the negative ones at this point in my journey. And as with many things I talk about on this channel, I could probably go much deeper, but I'll stop here for today. What are your thoughts and reactions about what I've shared? Do you experience social dysphoria? And if so, what contributes to it? And what do you find helpful for dealing with it? Let me know all of this and more down in the comments below. And as always, Tipsy and I love you all and hope you're staying safe and sound. If you have not done so already, please be sure to give this a huge thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. I love you all. Bye for now.